All right, good evening, everyone, friends, families, parents, staff, neighbors, community members, anyone joining us tonight. Welcome to another episode of SCSD Family Connect Bear Hunt. So, on tonight's episode, we're gonna talk about some bear poop. We're going to take a look at the supply list we need to build our bridge, and we are going to take another look, of course, at how to spot a bear. So, we are going to jump in with this. Okay, so we are going to get started tonight. I want to go at what you are looking at is the tutorial for a bear hunt. We're going to start with Mark 7, Clue 17. And what you see on your screen here is 3 different budget transfer reports. So this is the bear poop. And if you look closely here, each budget transfer report is different. So in 2021, you see a column that says PROG. In May 2023, you see a column that says program. And then in May 2024, you see, which is the most recent budget transfer report that's available to us, you see a column that says program and another column that says project. If you've watched some of these videos before, you know that we've been talking about programs and projects. And you've probably heard me use the word interchangeably from time to time as we've built this and hypothesis and tried to sort out how to read this budget line code here on your screen. So this is what we thought it was. And now we have to look at this most recent budget transfer report to make sure that we are still holding a valid hypothesis. And it boils out to this. Because the project code, which is here under project grant with the yellow arrow, exists of 6 digits, and program codes consist of 5 digits, it would seem that the original hypothesis statement that we identified in our special revenue code is correct. Even though the budget transfer reports look a little wonky depending on what month it is, what year it is, and who's printing them out and preparing them, the hypothesis that we have here still seems to stand. So now that we have caught up on the most recent updates to the bear hunting tutorial, we are going to go ahead and take a look at the supply list for building our bridge, right? And here is the supply list. It looks like this. I'll blow this up a little bit for you guys. Okay, so we'll start on this page. This is a list of the projects that the school district currently holds. Okay, so you'll see some names familiar on this screen. ARPIS, Recovis. Those are some new fundings that came out of COVID-19 and trying to recover from the learning loss. So we're going to take a look at this box right here. Because there's 2 vocabulary words on this box that we need to familiarize ourselves with. And if you want to learn more about these words, you can check out this document on your page. Okay. But the words that we're going to familiarize ourselves with tonight have to do with programs. So it is a school-wide program and a targeted assistance program. In school-wide programs, those are used to implement reforms to upgrade the entire educational program of the school. And then in targeted assistance programs, those are used for students who are at the most risk of failing to meet achievement standards. Now, as a supply list for bridge building, this document identifies three different things. So we looked at this list with Recovis and ARPA funding. These are grants. These are new grant packages or grant packages that have not yet been identified. So you'll see on the here it says many of these projects use a broad definition of educational excellence. They maintain civil rights for all students and allow the school agency to focus on diverse curriculum and learning experiences. So some of this money has been used for like our robotics courses and things of that nature. That is broad, diverse, integrated curriculum. There is another part of this list which is up here, and these are your title grants. So these are your federal grants coming from the Every Student Succeeds Act. And in this chart, you see the name of the grant. Now, I've pulled these grants from the grant award list. So all of these titles in this yellow column here are grants that the school has received the past school year. Then I put a reference to the legal part of the law where the grant is based on. There's a spot for website and sources, and I have those, but we're not going to go through all of those tonight. And then these columns over here inevitably get filled in with the agency's grant code for that specific grant. And then the money in a school-wide program is consolidated. So instead of keeping it all separate, they're allowed to put it into a bigger bucket. And that's the second part of this column right here. So the 21st Century Schools grant ID is G24796, or at least it was last year, and it is typically consolidated into class 2100. Now this chart down here works the same way. It's just these packages are different. They're not title packages. And now we have a different chart. This chart is for our programs. Now, if we look back at our code, ooh, where's our page? Sorry, guys. Okay, the red charts were this one for grants or projects. Oop, I just skipped a page on y'all and I didn't mean to. I apologize. So the red charts we were just looking at in the bridge fill in the last box over here. The charts we're about to look at on the supply list are for our programs. This is the second to last box in our code. Or in the example of the code you see on the screen, it would be the 00270 in the first line or the 00000 in the second line. If we look for the 00270, we see it here. It is one of our CTE programs. Now, there's a bunch of programs on this list, and this list is not yet complete. This supply list was originally published on Sunday, and since Sunday, there have been some additions to it. You'll see the numbers in red here. Those are all things that have been identified and added since this last Sunday. We see the AVID program, and of course, we see our attendance program under code 02480. So all of the pieces of information that have been identified were extracted from other school documents and then placed into this table. So that is our supply list for the bridge. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the bridge itself. So it's a pretty big bridge, many, many feet long, 90-foot drop. And as we look at building the bridge, we have to keep in mind those metrics and the environment of which we are collecting our supplies in. So, the part of the bridge that works with programs versus projects and understanding the difference between the two is currently part of the hypothesis that's going to be built using logical statements. So we have to understand when we got and how old our supplies were. So if you're looking at a budget transfer from 2021, that was well before the bear hunt began, well before Micron visited the superintendent's parent advisory council. If you're looking at something after 2023, then there's was the community, me, other families, teams, my friends had started talking greatly about family involvement at that point. So we also saw the events happen at Lincoln. We also saw some things happen with CNY Central and cease and desist notices. So the environment changed, and that in this situation matters. Um, so we have when, which plays into our if then statements. Then we have if, what we know. So if i- is part of the bridge. If we have a program code that is 5 zeros, then what does that mean? What do we believe it means? As we work on building this bridge, there are some ors that are going to remain constant as we work on this hypothesis. Now, this isn't to be a negative Nancy, but when you are building with if then statements and working with logical arguments, you have to account for all equations. So we can build a hypothesis as great as we want it to be, and it can work out many times, but there may be some instances where it doesn't work out. So reasons for those instances not working out would be, or the people preparing the documents don't understand the meaning of versus programs versus projects, or someone in the agency is trying to mislead or disguise information to the public. And we saw in the last bear hunting video with the snake that there was that consultancy that just had some X's and had no information. It wasn't a full line code. So there's justification for having that identified in our hypothesis. And then we also have to consider if the document was tampered with after the fact. So we have seen some things come and go from the school district website. And again, there is justification for keeping those things as possibilities when we build our if then statements. So these are some of the things that our if then statements could be. And we're not going to stress these too much because we don't have a full program code list, but we're just going to briefly look at them. So if it has a program code and it doesn't have a project code, then that program could be part of the school site's written plan, or it could be something that supports the entire district and all 32 school sites. For example, they just did an evaluation of the effectiveness of the after school programs. It was paid for with the 21st Century Community Learning Center money. So that would be something that would benefit the after school programs, that would benefit the entire system, because we have one of those programs at every school site. So, if it has a project code slash grant code, but it does not have a program code, then That could mean it is a targeted assistance program, or it could mean that the grant the project is attached to. The grant the project, oh, I have a typo there, but the grant the project is attached to is targeted to specific cohorts of young scholars. So we see that with some of our P-TECH and CTE programs. Some of those are funded by specific grants just for that specific program. And again, we have our bunny friend with us because we always have to account for the or as we work with if then statements in this scenario. So then we have another scenario that we've seen with our budget codes. It says if it has both a project code and a program code, that could mean that it's a targeted assistance program that they're trying to keep afloat, or it is a program that is producing good results. In this specific scenario, there's probably going to be some other ones in that middle tier. Again, we're just building these and, drawing our potential designs for our bridge. So if it does not have a project code and it does not have a program code, then it could be related to business administration and overhead, or we could be looking at some other unknowns, right? So we do see codes that say 000.0000000 a lot. Um, we'll just have to keep exploring this as we move forward now that we understand what each piece of the code means. So at this point, I know I've been talking for a while now. I want to give everybody a break to go ahead and shake their willies out, get a drink, get a snack or something. You got about 10 seconds or so, and we are going to move on to the last part of our agenda tonight, which is how to spot a bear. All right, so it's important. We are transitioning right now. So we know what our bridge looks like. We have an idea of how we're going to build the bridge, but we don't have all of our supplies and our information yet. So as we gather our supplies and our information, we still have to keep our eyes out for the bear. What is the bear? The bear are legally restricted family involvement funds. Okay, so these funds are not clearly earmarked, and as we have seen in the past, reviewing other school documents, they appear in different places and sometimes they look like different things. So when we're trying to spot a bear, we can spot the bear in a couple different ways. And it really depends on your perspective and how you want to approach the situation and what you're looking at. So you could look at the picture on the screen and you could say, hey, that looks like a really pretty sunset. You could also say, that could be pretty dangerous cliff if it was a park and it doesn't have any gates. So, that is a rhetorical statement, what I just said about the cliff not having gates, right? So logically speaking, I can't see the whole coastline there. I don't know whether there's a gate or not, but rhetorically speaking, I can hypothesize and make some judgments. So when hunting for bears, we can look for bears logically and we can say, hey, this consultancy doesn't have a way to tell if it's effective or not, and we're spending this money without a plan in place to evaluate the program. Cough, cough, Frank Fowler. Um, then we have a that's logic. Then we can look at the Bears financially, which is what we which is what we're doing when we talk about building a bridge. Then another way we can look at building a bridge is rhetorically. which is something that we're going to practice tonight in just a second. So before we get into the rhetorics of tonight's episode, I do just want to point out that one more thing about looking for bears logically. So we do know that they are consolidating funds. And when consolidating funds, we need to figure out kind of when, where, how, what are their go-to consolidation tactics, I suppose, for lack of a better word or knowledge in this instant. So we've already identified class 21100 as being the primary holder for a lot of our legally restricted money. On your screen, you are looking at a bear. The bear is circled for you, and it is a circle because it is a transfer within the same program. So that tells me that if they can transfer money within this, if they're transferring money within the same program, then there's a lot of different money moving through that particular program. That would be program 01310. So again, when hunting for bears, we just found that bear on this screen logically. Now I want to go ahead and we're going to have a little bit of fun. Let's it wouldn't be a good episode of SCSD Family Connect if we didn't play with a little bit of math. So I have some hypothetical situations here for you, and we're going to explore those tonight. Those who are familiar with the bear hunt understand. Did I spell title wrong? I think I spelled title wrong. Oh well. Title I funds are the funding that promotes public schools. The core of the public school program identifies family involvement as a necessary and essential function in the program. So, regardless of anything else in this example tonight, we're just going to assume for a little while that the family involvement money is necessary and essential. So SCSD got $19,341,238 in Title I money for the 2023 school year. They are required by law to reserve 1% of that money for family involvement. Now, if we assume that despite the demand and despite the need for increased family involvement in this particular agency, if we assume that they are still only reserving 1% of that money towards family involvement, the amount of money that should be reserved comes out to $193,412. Now, let's get into our rhetorical and our hypothetical situation tonight. Let's say that we have our parent teacher association for the school district, and that of the 37 programs covered in the district, 32 of them are traditional enough to where they can have a parent teacher organization. So we have 32 teams in our parent teacher organization. And we're just going to take the 1% of money that the is reserved for family involvement, and we're just going to divvy it up between the 32 teams. Kind of like the same way that each Head Start site takes their federal grant money and awards $10 per student and buys everybody's school pictures. We're going to assume that we're doing the same thing with that money right now. We're taking the 1% and we're just divvying it up to every school site. And then it gets divvied up to every school site, and after that, they can do whatever they want with it. If they divvy it up to every school site, it would be $6,044.14 to each PTO at the schools. Now, there are legal restrictions on what you would be able to do with these federal funds. So if each school site has 6,000 some odd dollars, there's legal restrictions on what they would be able to do with that money. They would not just be able to go buy candy bars with that money. That money would only be allowed to be spent on things that supported their monthly required PTO meetings, because PTO meetings are required by federal law. So in our rhetorical situation tonight, they would have $6,000 to spend on their each year to support their 12 months worth of meetings. Now that we have an idea of what that would be, right? So if we just took the money and we split it up and we said, okay, it's each of our 32 groups, you now have $6,044.14 to support your PTOs. Sounds great. Now, in 2024, in such a large system, we need to be able to make sure that each of those different 32 groups are communicating with each other. How do we do that? Not only do they need to communicate with each other, they need to be able to communicate amongst themselves and with the hundreds of parents at their schools. So, what do the costs look like for having a PTO at your school group? Here's an example of what those costs look like. So if a school site wanted to run flyers, print papers, and run a newsletter, a PTO, and they use 5 reams of paper per month, it would cost $32.97. If the school district charged every PTO a flat rate for printer ink, it would be about $35 each month. They are now these. We're going to skip the Microsoft Access for a second, and we're going to look at the staff stipend, and we're going to look at the transportation reimbursement. Okay, by law, you can use your federally funded reserved funds, that $6,000, to pay staff to attend your PTO meetings. So this is after hours. If they have to report to a different site besides your school basement, if this is a community activity you want help with, let's say you want to staff at your schools at your PTO meetings 3 hours a month, it would be roughly $108 a month to make that happen. Now, transportation reimbursement. Schools are also able to reimburse families for traveling to and from PTO meetings. We don't do it. Some other agencies in the area stopped doing it after COVID-19, but transportation reimbursement is something that would also be covered in that $6,000 if the family involvement money went directly to the PTOs. So let's take a look at this. If we include one Microsoft Access business email for each school site, and each school site pays for their own business email. In addition to everything else you see on your screen, it would cost them $188.47 a month in overhead costs to run their PTO. So, of that federal money, they would use $188.47 to provide the group with the minimum overhead cost you see on your screen. Now, how much would that cost per site per year? It would be $2,261.64. So if you take that out of your 6,000, there's still quite a bit of support money left in in this scenario for the federal funds. Now, if you look at annual expense on federal reserves, this number was calculated a little differently. This is the number that represents how much it would cost for the district to support a PTA association where all of these costs were accounted for. So instead of each site running their own group and spending those monies, that we could have a PTO association covering the cost you see on your screen. It's $5,793.54 because Microsoft provides a discount slash grant to nonprofits who have multiple licenses. And if we bought if the school district recognized the PTA, or if there was a PTA that covered 36 school sites, however you want to put it out, it would be $5,793.54 a year to provide 36 sites, 36 emails for parent involvement money, and or 36 emails, printing paper, and staff to support functional parent teacher organization meetings every year. Now, why did we just go through and talk about all of that? Right? So we talked about all of that because when we find our family involvement money, whenever it is, we find our family involvement money. Okay, let's assume for a second we have some decisions to make. Okay. Um, First of all, let's recognize here that everybody has a different definition of family involvement. So, what I define as family involvement is not necessarily what the district defines as family involvement. That's obvious. What the law defines as family involvement is pretty clear. Maintaining PTO meetings is a necessary function. Not only do they have to provide a revenue for them, they have to help train families so they're effective. Effective in what? Producing positive long term change in our school sites. It is the PTOs are the traditional mechanism there. So if we want positive long term change in our school sites, we need to have them hard, nitty gritty financial conversations about what it's going to take to uplift our 32 different teams, which is why we just went through the rhetorical conversation about family involvement money and how much it was going to cost to have a PTA supported in the way that the school system is traditionally designed to support it. It's all a rhetorical conversation because one, we don't have cooperation from the school district, and two, we need to take into consideration the Superintendent Parent Advisory Council, who is traditionally designed to be the group responsible for overseeing our family involvement funds. So that original 1,900 some odd dollars worth of money that we're reserving here, okay? This $193,412, that is the money that that the Superintendent Parent Advisory Council is responsible for making sure is spent effectively. If we want to update our community involvement plan, then we need to look at what the potentials for those things are, and it opens the doors to all other types of conversations. Now, before we can really have those conversations, we need to really go ahead and try to find our bears, right? We need to find this money and figure out what it is being spent on currently and how effective are the things that it's currently being spent on, because the pump bus, which showed up on the website as recently as last year but hasn't existed for 10 years, is not an effective way to spend our money. So tonight we went ahead and participated in a little bit of a rhetorical conversation about how much money we are actually looking for in the bear hunt. Are we looking for $193,000? Are we looking for just enough money to support the PTAs? That is up to viewer discretion at this point. It's also up to our family in our community and those who show up to our family group meetings every month. Um, with that being said, our activity has just about come to an end tonight. Um, we will, of course, there will always be another video where we'll go ahead and continue to look logically at the tax program. That's one of the things I want to do is go back into the records and see if we can compare and contrast the coding for all the times we spent money on the PAX program. Um, Yesterday was August 8th, which meant that there was that special little concert that was authorized by the superintendent yesterday. Um, that also just happened, and I haven't seen any news or any press on that. So we're going to be going back and pulling out that piece of budget code from our records to see exactly what that code says about the performer who was just came into Syracuse yesterday and had like a 3-night hotel room and did a whole series concert. Um, paid for by the school district, even though it didn't, even though that code in the program description, the description of that expenditure didn't explain what students that contract was for. I'm gonna go back and look at that code and see if we can kind of figure it out by the other information that showed up in the budget. Um, so if you wanna learn more about that contract, piece and see what happened with that concert that was bought and paid for over 6 months ahead of time, but nobody heard or knew about it. Make sure you go ahead and join the SCSD Family Connect Facebook group because that will be one of our newer group exclusives coming up in the next couple of days. Again, you can find most of the materials on YouTube for downloads and documents of the resources. That's also available in the SCSD Family Connect Facebook group. So, thank you for joining us tonight, and we will talk again soon.